YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. I kid you not, CNN has an article that was published on February 16th, 2024 about the Georgia Guidestones. And the article isn't just talking about, hey, the Georgia Guidestones got torn down, and of course blaming it on conservatives or blaming it on Christians for tearing it down or blaming it on conspiracy theorists, really is what they did. The article is actually talking about how the Georgia Guidestones are misunderstood and how the Georgia Guidestones were actually very, very correct. So in other words, it was what the article's trying to do, is I'll read it to you, is trying to normalize depopulation. It's trying to say that, hey, these people who were behind the Georgia Guidestones were right. We really have a population problem, and we should start killing people off. And of course, as you'll hear throughout this video, it starts to really break down what people need to get killed off. And, well, they're pretty much convincing their psychotic audience, the people who actually read CNN and go there for news, they're pretty much convincing them as if they don't need it. Well, at this point, they probably don't need it, since they already are being, mind controlled into thinking this already. But they're letting them know that people who disagree with them, probably Christians, are the ones that we should be killing off. You won't believe it. So I'll get into it in a second. Just do me a favor and take this time. If you still like my content, if you're still listening at this point, all my new content is going to be going up on the channel link below, which is called Nations Conspire. So please subscribe now if you haven't yet. I can't tell you enough that you need to do it now before I take this video down and before this channel is removed. I have to continue to dodge bullets here to be able to put content up, and I need you to dodge bullets with me. So subscribe now if you haven't yet, and if you think you've subscribed, double check, because I guarantee you probably haven't. You're just misremembering, not because of the 5G, because I'm losing a channel a week at this point. So make sure you do that. I'm trying different things this time to avoid detection. So make sure you subscribe now if you haven't yet. As I do normally every day, I go through the headlines and the propaganda out there to show you what they are really trying to tell you. And I was absolutely I don't get floored very often, but as of February 16th, this article was on the main page of CNN, okay? 2 mysteries surrounded the Georgia Guidestones. One may have finally been solved. And there is an article that is talking about depopulation. I repeat, depopulation, and they're fully in the article siding with the people who put up the Georgia Guidestones, which was the fictitious character who, let's be real about it. Who is the guy who supposedly put the Georgia Guidestones up? They like to tell us that it's a fictitious character who goes by the name Robert Christian. Some of us believe that it's actually Ted Turner or associates of Ted Turner. It doesn't really matter who the person is. I mean, it's really a George Glass, somebody that you could never really find or identify, right? So they're talking about the Georgia Guidestones. They're talking about the man behind the Georgia Guidestones was troubled by overpopulation. And the article starts off, and I'm not going to read you the whole article because I won't put you to sleep, but the person who wrote it was trying to figure out, why did they blow up the Georgia Guidestones? A monument in our country that was put there by psychopaths talking about depopulating humanity. And this article is trying to say that it was a wonderful thing and how China is right about the population. This is what they're doing to the minds of really people who identify as Democrats and liberals, because conservatives, while they're stuck in a hive mind as well, would never be for this. This is stuff that actually bothers them. But liberals are getting convinced into communism and getting convinced into an overpopulation problem. These people are literal psychopaths, and they're so easy to manipulate that they could put an article out there like this, and it starts off by saying, or the author of this article is saying, as I learned, one of those mysteries was not really a mystery anymore. Its revelation would put the story on the guidelines in a harsh new light. And he goes on to say, I was really disappointed to think that somebody would go to the extreme to destroy something that has not hurt anybody one way or the other over 42 years. I mean, it's been here. Why would you want it to be destroyed? Oh, okay, so you have monuments up that talk about murdering civilians, a mass genocide, because the only way you're going to keep humanity under 500 million would be to kill 7.5 at least billion people. So that would be a threat. But instead, what they look at as a threat is people like me who are trying to warn people about who these people really are. I'm not calling on violence, I'm not doing any of that, but people like us are the real threat. This monument's literally calling on mass genocide, and the guy who writes the article, who should be arrested on the spot, I'm getting to a point where I'm ready. I am getting ready to rise up against this garbage. Because you're telling people out there about this Guidestone and how it shouldn't have been destroyed, right? And again, the Guidestones, the article tries to talk about how some conspiracy theorists blew up the Guidestones. The elitists blew up the Guidestones. They victimized the Guidestones to make it seem like conspiracy theorists are terrorists. They planted that seed, but they also had to go and get the capsule, okay? There are time capsules built underneath these monuments. And there's specific dates for them to remove the time capsules with notes of instructions for what to do next. Okay, the same thing is in the Denver airport. So it said, here's the article. Let me read some of the article to you. Okay, in spite of the knowledge, or perhaps inspired by it, the mystery man who would endeavor to write 10 new guidelines for all humankind and have them inscribed in stone in 8 languages on vertical slabs of pyramid blue granite in a field outside Elberton. The first of these new principles unveiled on a spring day in 1980 were to maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. The global population was then about 4.5 billion. Following the stranger's first proposal would have required a population reduction of almost 90%. As I looked into the backstory of the Guidestone's creator, known as Robert Christian or R.C. Christian, I learned that he published a book in 1986 under his fictitious name called Common Sense Renewed, was said to explain his plan for humanity. The book was rare and elusive. No copies were available on Amazon, nor at any of my local libraries. I saw it listing in the holdings of Ave Maria University in Florida and searched for it there. Neither I nor a librarian could find the book in the stacks. Later, a supervisor called me to say that it had disappeared. I kept looking until I found a copy of the book in the online catalog of an obvious place, the public library in Elberton. It wasn't on the shelf there either, but when I asked the librarian, she retrieved it from a room behind the desk. The book had a hard gray blue cover with the title and author's name in gold lettering, and I opened the book, okay? And then it says the headline, "The man behind the Guidestones was troubled by overpopulation." I am the originator of the Georgia Guidestones and the sole author of its inscriptions, Christian wrote. I have had the assistance of a number of other American citizens in bringing the monument into being. And those citizens are all citizens who should be taken out for treason. All citizens who are likely, obviously, members of secret societies, whether it's Freemasonry, but this is probably likely way higher up stuff. Okay, so I have had the assistance of a number of other American citizens in bringing the monument into being. We have no mysterious purpose or utter motives. We seek common sense pathways to a peaceful world, without bias for particular creeds or philosophies. Yet our message is in some areas controversial. I have chosen to remain anonymous in order to avoid debate and contention. Our guides must stand on their own merits. And when you word articles like this, when you word things, when you word a book that's really about mass genocide and you tell everyone reading it who can't think for themselves that all they care about is a peaceful world, a world without bias, these triggered terms manipulate the person reading it into thinking that this person had good intentions with putting up a monument that's talking about the mass execution, a mass extinction of humanity. It's utter insanity. And this is CNN for you. This is somebody who's getting promoted on CNN. They're right. You know, this would be like a mass murderer being allowed to publish articles for the CNN, say for CNN or any of these mainstream media outlets saying, hey, you know, I think people should be killed because I don't like the fact that there's people around. I don't really like people. And everyone would say, well, why don't we kill this guy if we're going to start with killing people for having the opinion that he wants to see lots of people dead because he sounds like he's a domestic terrorist. But of course, the real domestic terrorists are people who are against depopulation, people who actually point out the fact that if you drive cross country in the United States of America, you will find I mean, we're talking like from the East Coast to the West Coast. How many miles is that? 4,000 miles? Plus, I might be wrong about that off the top of my head. You will find at least a 3,000 mile stretch with nothing. And you can go north to south. I mean, look at states like Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas. There's nothing. Okay, they've crammed people into certain areas, and they've given the illusion that we're overpopulated. And they're doing this the same way China did. The article goes on to say, listen to this, the 10 guidelines included a call for a world court to resolve external disputes and a living new language to unite humanity. So a one world language, again, this is referencing the Tower of Babel, right? Unite humanity. Remember Babel, as in Babel, God scrambled the tongues and scrambled the languages up so people would not be able to, form a new world order in some senses, right? And then, of course, a world court. So what do we see going on with the current court system in America? The left and the right telling us and showing us that the court system is flawed, that it doesn't work. The liberals crying about Roe v. Wade, the conservatives crying about free speech and about the stuff they're allowing into schools, right? They're trying to get people to literally agree to a new court system, and that would be the world court. So it goes on to say it will be necessary for well-informed citizens to work with knowledgeable physicians in establishing guidelines that will make possible a reasonable allocation or rationing of the care we can collectively afford, favoring those individuals whose counting lives are most valuable to society at large. This theme of valuing some lives more than others continue as Christian explored one of his favorite topics, reducing the global population. Quote, we establish social environments in which many talented and productive individuals are constrained to limit their reproduction. While at the same time, we provide subsidies that encourage childbearing by the indigent, the lazy, the irresponsible, and the inadequate. Let me reread that. While at the same time, we provide subsidies that encourage childbearing by lazy, irresponsible, and the inadequate. I mean, are you joking with me? This is CNN, and people can't read this and see what they're telling you, these psychopaths. Oh, let's promote genocide. And on top of that, he's saying we need to ration. Okay, we need to favor those individuals whose continuing lives are most valuable to society at large. And whose are those? Whose lives are those? They're not Christians' lives. They're not RC Christians' lives, which is why he picked the name. They're talking about communists. They're talking about literal psychopaths, people who are castrating themselves. Oh, their lives are... This is when we read stuff like this, that civilians need to protect themselves, be prepared to protect themselves, and really need to start a revolution, okay? This is mainstream news. So the audience that reads this, they believe everything that they hear on CNN. They go to CNN, these dimwits, and they read stuff like this, and like, maybe, this is how you seed plant these people into be on board with mass genocide, with overpopulation stuff. 10 years ago, talking overpopulation, everybody out there was against it. It didn't matter what your political affiliation was. People were like, no, overpopulation, that stuff in China is insane. They can only have one kid. They're not allowed to have kids. Even Democrats were like, oh, that's insane. Now we're at a point where they're able to convince them that we need to limit childbearing. And of course, limit childbearing we want to encourage childbearing by lazy, irresponsible, and inadequate. I mean, can we emphasize that? This is something that needs to be on YouTube, but again, I can't talk over there. Christian hoped for drastic changes on this front. He said, it is vitally important that we each national government have a considered population policy. A few generations of single-child families will make possible dramatic improvements of living standards in even the most impoverished countries. Do you hear that? And you don't think for 1 second that these unhinged liberal lunatics, that they can't be convinced that we need to murder conservatives or murder Christians? Of course they could be convinced. Look at they word this population policy. Oh, okay, well, you have to follow the policy. The policy says you have to be vaccinated. The policy says you can't be Christian. The policy says you can't speak hate, right? This has to be stopped. In Christians' view, it goes on to say only one notable country had already begun to address the problem. No major power except China has indicated an awareness of the problems of overpopulation. It's not clear precisely what Christian knew or believed about China's one-child policy when he wrote the book. More details would emerge after the policy ended in 2015. In 2019, Chinese-American filmmaker Nanfu Wang released One Child Nation, a documentary film about life in China under the one-child policy. Wang returned to her hometown in Jiangxi I have no idea what that word is. Province to interview people there. Sterilization takes 10 minutes. The midwife who delivered Wang as a baby said in the film, on my operating table, I do over 20 a day. In those days, women were abducted by government officials, tied up, and dragged to us like pigs. I mean, are you joking me? Are you joking me? I mean, China, when I look at China, I think of the devil. That's what I think of. When I see Xi Jinping, I think of the devil. Okay, I know we always look at Klaus Schwab, who was also a devil. But, the stuff inflicted over there, and then you watch how the Chinese operate, the civilians, they're so brain dead. They're on pace and on par with the Democrats in the United States of America. They're like, I can't get on a plane. This guy couldn't fly a plane to go see his dying sick mother. People are like, well, he disagreed with Xi Jinping. Are you joking with me, you psychopaths? These people are sick, and never in human history. We can look back at Stalin, and we could look back at what, your take is on Hitler, right? Because we all know the real story about the Holocaust and everything else. But let's focus on any of these people, the Roman Empire. There's never been a time period where a government's been more wicked. You might look back and be like, well, that's not true because in Rome or these other empires, they were slaughtering people. They are slaughtering people. Silent weapons for quiet wars. They're poisoning people. They're doing it so subtly and getting away with it. And sooner or later, they will call for the guillotines because they're going to make Christians in the minds of society such enemies of the state that people are going to cheer and want Christians to be executed. People like me, people like you. It's insanity. It's utter insanity. They're talking about the government officials dragging, raping, tying up women, treating them like pigs. And this is what Democrats want in this country. Like, I want communism. Communism isn't so bad because they're so dumb. They think that they're victims. They're like, I'm a victim because my skin color in America. Oh, are you? Are you? Go try to get a job, not get it, and then sue because your skin color, you automatically win. There wouldn't even be a trial. One child nation, right? So the other thing to note of China ending that policy in 2015 is they no longer needed the policy because nobody can have babies anymore. Haven't you noticed? Everybody knows multiple people. I don't even know that many people, but I know multiple people who are unable to have kids. I know people who have gotten the procedures, IVF, I think it is, something like that, where they have to do in vitro or, get literally in a petri dish, be able to create a baby because their bodies aren't able to do it because of the chemical baths they're putting people under, because of the injections that people are taking, thinking that they're healing their bodies, and they're not. So the article goes on to defend the Guidestones. It says the Guidestones were often under attack by vandals. Then they talk about the fake story, which I've covered. Those videos should be here on the website. About, the car got away and mysteriously there was no big trial for the guy that blew him up. Because it's all fake. They blew him up on purpose because of the capstone, not the capstone, the time capsule that was underneath it. They needed it. So they go on to talk about the victimization. Well, telling people, these stones really, they were victims. Nobody should blow them up. Meanwhile, they're tearing down statues of other things. And I agree with the tearing down of the statues of the forefathers of this country anyway, because they're all Masons. So the Masons are doing this by design anyway, because it's for the betterment of their new world order. But, they agree with what suits them, right? So let me get this straight. Because they consider conservatives the ones who took it down, everybody agrees that they should still be up, even though it's calling for the mass execution of humanity. These people are falling for this stuff. And as we head towards more persecution of Christians, these people are going to get bloodlust. They're going to get bloodlust. And I'm going to cover this in a separate video, this documentary, God and Country, because you can see where they're headed with bloodlust. And we need to be mentally and physically prepared. We need to be armed and we need to be, have our homes in order, etc. Because the article goes on to mention, I think religious zealots did it, right? Oh, religious zealots. And they go on to say, quote, we had that lady running for governor. I can't remember her name. They said they were of Satan and had to come down, right? Well, being that it's calling for mass genocide, I would think it was of Satan, okay? Because mass genocide, these people who believe in the Holocaust and they sit there and they go, oh my God, it's the worst thing ever, even though really Christians are executed in most of these genocides. And that's exactly what they're doing right now. They cry about that stuff to the point where you're not allowed to even speak about those people because they've been such victims, right? But you have something that's calling for the execution of 7.5 plus billion people. And they go, I think they should have been up. I think that they didn't do anything wrong. No, they didn't do anything wrong. They told the plans of wicked elite people who are in power, who are using things like that to convince you that we need to murder and execute people who are not part of the communist, the communist movement, the woke movement. Be prepared, folks. This is the type of propaganda we're going to continue to read. I'm telling you, the bloodlust is coming. They're going to be calling for our blood. Okay? Look how many people call to silence us just from speaking on the internet. And what is anybody really doing? Like, I'm not even being vicious. You want to see me vicious? I can make somebody cry. And I'm not saying that to be cocky. I can make somebody cry on the spot, crap their pants, if I felt like it. I don't even raise my voice when this is me talking normal. It's like talking on the phone with people I'm friends with, family members. Okay? But people out there are so afraid of the truth, they will do whatever they can to protect stuff like this over the truth because they're so under hypnosis. We've got to pull them out. We've got to be prepared. And again, now is the time. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my backup channel, Nations Conspire. It is linked below for new content. You'll get new content every day about all the stuff going on. I'm even going to go into deeper detail like I used to do on a lot of the videos. I'll also be live streaming over there. That's, of course, if the channel could remain up for longer than a week, but I'm trying different things to keep my channels up. So please do me a favor. If you consider my channel helpful, please subscribe. If you want my content, please subscribe. Please don't wait any longer to do so. I thank you all for being here again. It's called Nations Conspire. You can look it up. You'll be able to find it. And it's linked below as well. God bless all of you as always and your families.